Hey guys, it's Madison Estes. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to my nighttime reading vlog. Tonight I am going to be reading Deserter, a horror manga collection by Junji Ito. I just started to recently get into this author. I went to the library and checked out a bunch of his books at once, and this one was the last one to arrive, and it was going to show up like 2 weeks later, so I was just going to go ahead and cancel that and then pick it up another time. But then I found out that one of the stories sounded really interesting. It's about an army deserter in World War II that is hiding out with a family, and the family doesn't tell him that the war is over, and they keep him there for 8 years after the war is over. I'm very curious to know what the motive is and why the family lies to him, so I'm going to read that story first, and then I'm going to go back to the beginning and read the stories in order. Okay, so that was one of the best stories I have ever read, or at least one of the best Junji Ito stories. It's one of the best, well, I don't want to tell you what kind of story it is because it's going to spoil it, but man, it was just really good. It was better than I thought it was going to be. I was very happy with the ending. Seems like there might have been some multiple motives going on, like different members of the family had different reasons for keeping the secret. I thought that the motive was believable. I thought the twist was slightly supernatural, but good, and I liked it a lot. It was very creepy. It was a very creepy ending. Definitely give that story a 5 out of 5 stars. It was great. So I just finished reading the first 3 stories in this collection, and they were all okay. These are all kind of mid, considering how good the last story was. I'm thinking it might have been a mistake to start with the last story, because it sets the bar really high. The first one is about a girl that's dining with this guy. They're talking about eating exotic foods and the weird things they like to eat, and then suddenly he wants her to drink his blood. And then he's, starts chasing her and, going after her, and it seems as though there's other women in his house that he has fed his blood to, and they've become not quite like vampires, but they're kind of like some kind of parasite that like needs his blood to survive, or they're like obsessed with his blood. The second one was a little more interesting. It's about a girl that, or I don't know if it's a girl, an entity that if it spends enough time hanging out with you, it begins to copy your face, and it's like a shapeshifter. And the shapeshifter creature doesn't even remember what their own face looks like, which I think is very interesting. So, this like shapeshifter type creature like will befriend someone and then start like copying their appearance, and sometimes the people around them don't know who's who. So that's kind of interesting, and I did like the ending to that one, which I won't spoil, but let's just say that somebody didn't like having their face copied and they kind of found a way to get revenge on the shapeshifter. The next story, Where the Sandman Lives, is about a guy who every time he falls asleep he thinks that there is another person inside of him in a different dimension that is trying to get out of his body and take over his life. So very cool concept. It's a shame there's so many of these stories. I just can't get into why it's so great because then it spoils everything, but this is one that had a really good twist at the end. So I just read The Devil's Logic. It's okay. It kind of reminds me a little bit too much of The Ring. It's sort of a little tropey in terms of just tropes I've seen before several times. This girl commits suicide, and it seems like she wasn't depressed or anything, so it was very mysterious, and he finds a tape in her bag and he listens to it, and then of course he also becomes suicidal because of what's on the tape. So yeah, it's a lot like The Ring. So this one was not my favorite. I just read The Long Hair in the Attic. That one's also okay. It's a little bit more original than the one before, but I just felt like it missed the mark by a little bit. But it was creepy. There's not really a whole lot of disturbing art in this one so far. These seem to be more concept horror as opposed to some of his more graphic ones that I've read. Like maybe Shiver or Smashed. But I do think that this one had a pretty creepy decapitated head in it, right here. So it's a little disturbing. I'm thinking it might get creepier as it goes on. But also Deserter didn't have a lot of graphic horror in it either, so The artwork's still very good. Like, his work is always at least 4 stars for me. I'm not gonna penalize it just because it's not super gory, although that is a plus for me. Anyway, so the story was pretty good. Again, it's just like the ending felt a little bit off the mark, but I did like the story, and I like that the beginning takes time to characterize the character and her boyfriend. Her boyfriend's a total douchebag, and you know, it kind of gives you a reason to kind of care for her and to feel upset about her untimely demise and the weird ass shit that happens afterwards. But yeah, anyway, so it was a good one. It's not my favorite. And I think that it doesn't help that I just finished reading The Liminal Zone, which is much longer stories, so you have a lot more time to get invested in the characters, and each of those stories feels very emotional. It's also by Junji Ito. But yeah, I don't know, maybe I just kind of feel like I wish some of these were a little bit longer. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Okay, so I just read the story Scripted Love, and we're back in business. That was a really good one. It's definitely a little bit more like thriller, psychological horror maybe, but you know, no supernatural elements, just a crazy woman doing crazy stuff, but I enjoyed it a lot. And I really liked the ending. I had a feeling I wasn't gonna like it, that it was gonna just be like vengeful ghost comes back from the dead, but it did not go in that direction. It stayed pretty realistic. It's about a guy that makes breakup videos for the girls that he's dating as his way of ending the relationship. He gives them like a 6-hour video of him talking to them, and then he gives them like a script so they can reply back to him. And apparently he's just like a total narcissist, and he thinks that, although this is a gift for his ex so that she won't miss him so much when he's gone. Like, yeah, it's just bonkers. Although, honestly, I've dated some guys that I think are narcissistic enough to do something like that. But anyways, and it's this very strange idea, but like the way it ends, I think, is pretty brilliant. So I enjoyed that one a lot. It was good. So after that story, I ended up getting really into this collection, and I finished the rest of it in one sitting. So the next story is called The Reanimator's Sword. It's about a guy whose grandfather passes away, and they bring in a necromancer to bring him back to life. The boy ends up following the necromancer in order to get, you know, answers about what he did and how he did it. And the necromancer tells him that just by looking at him, he can tell that the boy is also a future necromancer. It sounds like the introduction to a really awesome series, and I kind of wish that it was. I wish that this was like the prologue to an entire book, because it's just such an interesting concept, and also it had a really good twist, and it would definitely make me want to read more. So I really enjoyed it. My only complaint is, again, I just kind of wish that it was the beginning of a longer story, because I think it has a lot of potential. The next story is called A Father's Love. It's about a family that appears to be cursed. All of their children are mostly normal, except for the fact that all of them get headaches that last for a minute or two, and then they appear to be fine afterwards, but their behavior changes. So it's kind of a twist on a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde theme, which is kind of common in some of Junji Ito's stories. And I definitely liked the explanation behind what's causing the headaches and what's causing the children's behavior. In a way, it's almost like they become possessed. And again, I don't want to go into too many details because it was a really interesting twist, but I definitely thought that it was really interesting and that it had a satisfying ending. And a kind of a sad, bittersweet explanation behind it that I really enjoyed. Next up is Unendurable Labyrinth. This is one of the stories that was adapted into the Netflix anime series Maniac, so I was familiar with this story, and I didn't think that the manga added anything new to the story, so I was already familiar with it. I did like the story. It's not one of his best, but I still enjoyed it. I thought that it had a really creepy atmosphere. It's about a couple of girls that go to a Buddhist shrine, and it appears as though it's kind of like a really intense cult. And they meet a girl there who had originally gone there in order to try to find her brother, who appeared to kind of get immersed in the cult. And then they end up going into this dark, shadowy labyrinth place to try to find her brother, and they find a bunch of like living corpses there, like these monks that just kind of stand in a row and appear to be like half dead, half alive. And as they go deeper into it, it appears as though they're actually encountering like standing corpses. So it's a very creepy atmosphere. The story's okay. I kind of feel like the story would have been better if it had just been through the perspective of the sister that was looking for her brother. I didn't find the main characters as compelling as her storyline, but other than that, I enjoyed it. So the next story, and the last story that I'm going to talk about, because remember I started with the last story, Deserter, and then went back to the beginning. This story is called Village of the Sirens. So this story is about a guy that thinks that he sees his mother peeking out at him through his window, even though he lives in the city and she lives in a small village. And then he calls his mom and she doesn't answer, so he starts to get worried and he goes back to his parents' village. When he gets there, his mom is acting very weird and erratic, and he finds out that his parents' farmland is just, overrun with weeds and clearly hasn't been tended to. He asks his mother where his father is because his father was the one that liked farming so much, and his mother says that he works at the factory now, but his father is nowhere to be seen. He bumps into his old childhood friend and he finds out that she's been reading lots of books about the occult and that she stabbed her ears with ear picks in order to make herself deaf so that she wouldn't hear the siren that comes from the factory. And the reason she doesn't want to hear the siren is because it possesses people and makes them act in weird, erratic ways, hence his mother's odd behavior. By the way, what the heck is an ear pick? The first time I read it, my mind automatically changed it to ice pick, and I was like, holy shit, this girl is grateful to be alive. But I'm not quite sure what an ear pick is. I might need to Google that. Is it like a Q-tip? I'm picturing a Q-tip now. But I feel like, Q-tip would just get stuck in there. It's like, why don't you just use earplugs if that's the case? I don't know. So I thought the explanation of, what was behind the sirens, why everybody was acting weird and like abducting babies and stuff, I thought that the explanation was interesting. I liked the ending. I liked the climax of the story and what happened to, the guy that was behind it all. And I also thought that it did a good job of being slightly optimistic, but, not a complete downer ending, but also kind of insinuating really bad things are going to happen in the future. I just realized there was one more story I forgot to talk about. It's called Bullied. The reason I forgot is because it's another story that was adapted into an anime, so I didn't read it as closely as some of the other ones because I just knew, like, scene for scene, it was almost exactly the same. But it's a really good one. It's one of my favorite anime episodes, and it was one of the best stories in this collection, too. No supernatural elements, just, people being psychos and passing on trauma. It's about a girl that picks on this boy when they were kids, and, as she grows up, she develops feelings for him, and, things go bad. I feel like I'm not giving a good description of this story because it's just one of those ones you really just have to read, and if I tell you too many details, it'll ruin it. But it's a really interesting depiction of childhood bullying and, seeing like the long-term effects of that. And it's interesting seeing her holding on to all this guilt throughout most of her life and how she genuinely feels bad for the way she treated this boy. But then kind of watching the evil resurface a little bit. But I liked it a lot. I feel bad that I almost forgot to mention it, but it was another really good one. So overall, I enjoyed most of the stories in this collection. There's like 2 or 3 that are maybe kind of meh to me, but most of these stories are 4 and 5 star stories. So I give the storytelling in this collection 4 stars, and I give the artwork 4 stars as well. I'm not going to get into too much of it other than what I've already shown you because I just don't feel like there's anything that's a standout to me. I just think that it's consistently very detailed and good. There's not any parts where you can tell he's just kind of casting shadows on the characters' faces so he doesn't have to put more detail in or, taking any shortcuts. He really stays thorough and detailed throughout. So thank you for joining me during this nighttime reading vlog. If you've read Deserter or any of Junji Ito's other collections, please leave a comment in the comment section below and let me know what you think. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and be sure to subscribe. On this channel, I post reviews, writing advice, horror commentary, and vlogs. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later.